Hello, everybody. Just got to get my warm socks on. I got to get comfortable. How is everybody that's in chat? Okay. Okay. There we go. Okay. Hey, Barila's here. Finding Kino and Charlie. Good to see you guys. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. I hate to admit it, but it is. And I'm not very ready. My sweet husband, he went ahead and got all the rest of the gifts for the grandkids. So thank goodness for that. I don't have to worry. I just have to wrap them when they arrive. Anyway, I'm just going to wait just a few more minutes and see if anybody else shows up. I apologize for the late time. Sometimes I can't, just can't rearrange my schedule around work, but it's a wonderful job and I really like it. So I'm not going to complain. Anyway, let's see. Get rid of this notification. Okay. There we go. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just start, and hopefully we'll have a few more people that show up. I just feel like I need to. I don't like doing these when I have to tell the whole story. I've been looking forward to this since I decided that's what I would do tonight, and I was going to be doing part 2 of rewiring your brain for recovery. But the more I started digging into things, the more I want to know. And so part 2 will be coming in a few days. So I decided tonight, I'll just tell my story, the whole thing. Like I said, I don't like doing this. It brings up a lot of unpleasant, painful memories and shame, and it's not easy to deal with. But at the same time, I do not want to forget. I don't want to forget where I was and how far I've come. And I just want people to know that I'm, if you're an addict, you're not the only one. I've been through some really difficult stuff, and when you're in active addiction, you become somebody that you really don't like, and I don't want to forget that. Don't want to forget that. I don't want to hurt people again. I don't want to destroy what a beautiful life that I have now. So I'm going to go through some of this icky, painful stuff. And, I think the very first video that I posted on my channel, I said, I explained a little bit, but I didn't go into the icky details of my addiction, and I haven't done that in a long time, and I need to, because like I said, I don't want to forget. I never, yes, it's painful, we all have to deal with those things, but I don't want to forget. So I live in central Utah, and I live probably about 12 miles away from where I grew up. Not that far away. I grew up on a farm, and grew up next door to my grandparents. And we're poor. We went without a lot of things, but just at the same time, I had a great childhood, and I had my siblings. We didn't get to play with our friends very often, especially during the summer, just because we lived out of town. And But we really had a great childhood out on the farm, and we were able to do whatever we wanted, run, go wherever we wanted to. And summers it was playing in the canal and the ditches, and there were always chores and things to do. But boy, we had that whole farm, as our backyard, and we had a good time. But like I said, money was always an issue in my family growing up, and it caused a lot of stress to my parents. And I'm the oldest of four, and I'm a very, what they call a highly sensitive person. I just I am. I'm extremely sensitive to the energies in the room, the energies from people. Um, when somebody feels an extreme emotion, whether it's good or bad, if they're near me, I feel it too. And just all of the stress and the arguments and things that I saw going on, it affected me really deeply as a kid. And I know my parents, it's not their fault that that I'm really sensitive. And they really did the best they could. And I used to be really angry with them for some of the things that went on in the house at times. I don't want to go into details, just for the sake of my family. But there wasn't anything horrible. As don't get me wrong, there wasn't any like domestic abuse going on, or anything like that. It was just a couple that was really struggling. And me as the oldest, I was very sensitive to it. And because of that, I always felt like it was my responsibility to try to fix things. I was always trying to make things better, even as a really young child. And I had a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression. And I knew, even as a kid, I knew something was wrong with me, but I didn't know what. I mean, now I understand, as an adult. I mean, I've known for a long time that my whole life, ever since I can remember, I have had anxiety and depression. And boy, it's not been easy. But, despite that, like I said, I had a great childhood. I always craved attention from my parents. I'm one of those people that needs to hear approval, to be told that you're loved and that you're a good person, and that the things that you do are, that you're doing a good job. I really craved a lot of that. And that, my it just wasn't something that I was able to get, and it really did have an effect on me. When I was 11 years old, it was in September of 1982. And out on our farm, we had, and I have spoken about this before, but we had a big cornfield near our house, and it was right along a road that went right by our farm, and a lot of farmers used it. And I came home from school this one day in September that year, and put a helmet on. I remember even buckling this helmet up, got on this little motorcycle. My brother and I were going to take turns riding, up and down the farm road after school. And, I remember that day, I remember putting that helmet on. I remember, buckling it up, and I remember getting on that motorcycle. And I had just learned how to ride it. And it was one of those, I had a hand clutch. It wasn't an automatic, you know what I mean? You had to use the hand clutches and all that. And so I just to learn how to coordinate that all and do that all. And, so I wasn't even paying attention to really, I was listening to the engine of the motorcycle, and I wasn't paying attention to the road that went right by our farm. And there's a turkey feed truck that's going right down this road. And we kind of met, and I couldn't see because of the cornfield. And we met, and I remember just a big bang and a massive headache at first, but I can't remember a whole lot. But somehow I got caught underneath this feed truck. And this is, a farm road. It's dirt gravel road, and I was drugged down that road, and it actually knocked the helmet off. And even though, like I said, I remember buckling it up, but it knocked the helmet off. You had a massive head injury. It cut my head really badly. So my scalp was lifted up from my skull, and I mean, my face was just hamburger, and I had all the flesh just stripped off. I mean, it was this elbow and down the front of my legs. I mean, it was just, I remember standing after, I guess another farmer heard me screaming and stopped the truck because the guy didn't hear. He didn't hear when when I hit into that truck. But, anyway, when the truck stopped, I don't remember being drugged, but I do remember afterwards trying to stand up, and I just kind of had tunnel vision, and it was probably maybe a third of a mile away from my grandparents' house, and I knew that my mother and father weren't home at the time. They were both at work, but I knew grandma was home, and all I could think was, looking down and seeing my bones, and looking up, and seeing my grandmother's house, and just thinking, I've got to get there. And the rest of everything is really a blur. But there happened to be these two men that came driving out to the farm to come to deliver a birthday party invitation for my little brother. They were both EMTs, and they just happened, and I tell you, I don't believe in coincidence, but they came out there right as this had happened, and they got me in the back of the pickup truck, and they got me to the hospital local here in Sevier County. And I remember bits and pieces of it. I remember my grandmother was holding my head and things, but everything after that is a blur pretty much until I woke up in the ICU up in Provo. But that was the biggest hospital, because this is a smaller hospital down here. And I mean, this was 1982 as well, and there wasn't anything that they could do for me here. There wasn't Life Flight back then, and so they put me in an ambulance and sent me up north. And the doctor that had met me in the ER didn't think I was going to make it, but I did. But I do remember, I'm 11 years old. I remember waking up in the ICU, and I had this bandage around my head. And I do remember before they put me under for the first surgery, that they had told me they were going to have to shave my hair. And I wasn't happy about that. And I remember the first thing I could was, feeling and sticking my hands under the bandage on my head and feeling that my hair was, just like that. It was, not good memories. But, I made it. I lived. I had a few more surgeries after that, and lots of skin grafts. And, there was one point where they were wondering, the skin grafts that they would take skin from my upper thighs and put down on my lower legs where it was needed. And there were several spots where the skin graft just kept dying. They wouldn't take they wouldn't adhere and start to grow. They'd just die. And so they were wondering if they were going to have to amputate parts of my legs. And it was all just, it was a lot. And now, now that I'm 52 now, when I think of my children and my grandchildren, and I can't imagine what that must have done to my mom and dad, to have their daughter, almost die and just be chewed up. And, I could see the, when I was in the hospital, I remember seeing how stressed out they were. And I felt so guilty. And I felt like it was my fault, and that I was responsible for everything that I'd put them through. And it was just a really hard time. It was, I had so much going on up here, and, I'm 11 years old. I was just about to turn 12. And that's the time in your life when you really start to notice boys, and you start to You worry about how you dress and how you appear, and it was just a really interesting time for all of that to happen to me. It's just, I can't believe the scars that are gone off of my face. I mean, I had some really good doctors, that's certain, because my face was just a mess back then, and when my hair was gone, and I had no self-esteem. It was just awful. And while I was in the hospital, of course, it was lots of pain, especially at first. And they were giving me Demerol shots I don't even remember. And I learned very quickly that not only did it take away the physical pain, but it took away all the other pain and everything that I felt, the worry and the shame and feeling like I was, responsible for the whole mess, and putting my parents through that. It was so much. And that Demerol, that was sweet. I used to think how sweet it was that it just took that all away and made me feel so much better. And um I remember I started asking for it when I didn't need it. And I remember even one of the doctors um coming and talking to me about it, and asking me if I knew about drugs, and I just played dumb. But yeah, of course, I knew what addiction was. Even at that age, I knew, and I knew that asking for it when I shouldn't wasn't right. But you know what? I didn't care. I just didn't want to feel. And that it was a difficult time, but I got through it. But and I was able to leave it behind. I never actually went through withdrawals or anything like that, but I was, for a long time, was able to leave that behind. But I never forgot. um and later on, um when I was 17, is that whole the accident, just really had lasting long-term effects on me. um and just growing up, being a teenager, going to high school, it was all just, it was hard. And I always had just horrible anxiety and horrible depression. Like I said, I still didn't know what was wrong with me. I just knew that some nights I felt like I was going to lose my mind, and I just hurt so bad inside, and I didn't know what to do, and I just kept plugging along. And like I had stated earlier, I'm the kind of person that I one of my love languages is, what is it, where you need to hear that you're valued. You need to be told that, that's one of those things. And that's something I always craved. And so I worked really, really hard to try to get the approval of my parents. And I had perfect grades all through high school. And ended up, it was awesome. My very best friend and I, we were born in the same hospital a week apart, and we've known each other since kindergarten. And and to this day, she's still my very best friend. But she and I were, have always been best friends, and all through high school. And we both had perfect grades. And so in the end, we actually got to be co-valedictorians. But I worked my rear end off to get that. And all I wanted was for my mom to say, "Good job, I'm proud of you." And I know that she had a horrible childhood, and I'm sorry. Because I'm just one of those people. When I feel anything, I feel it 100%. I apologize. But like I said, that was just something. My mother had a very difficult childhood, and I understand a lot better now why the things that happened. And like I said, I'm not, there's some things I just won't go into detail because for the sake of my family. But I do understand why she wasn't able to give me that. And, it was, and it was weird. I remember having to speak at our graduation, high school graduation, and I just felt so empty. And it was such a letdown. I thought if I, was able to get to that point and 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 earn that title of valedictorian, well, co-valedictorian, I just thought that I'd build something better and it would make me better, or it would make me, I don't know what I thought, but it wasn't what I expected, and I just felt so hollow and empty, and and I was just so horribly depressed. And I had just a year before had lost my dad to cancer, which was just devastating to us. And I kind of skipped over that. I apologize, but my sweet dad, he ended up with cancer, and it started in his esophagus. And by the time it was caught, I guess it was just too late to really do anything. I mean, he was gone in 6 months, and he did chemotherapy and radiation, and he was just a few days shy of his 40th birthday. I mean, he was so young, and he left behind my mother and 4 kids, and it was just devastating. And I remember, people are so uncomfortable, when things like that happen. They don't know how, they want to help, but they don't know how to help, if they're sincere. And then there's a lot of people that really aren't sincere, but will say, well, if you ever need anything, just let us know, that kind of thing. I saw a lot of that. But what really got to me was so many people would come to me, being the oldest, and say, take care of your mother. And I felt like I was just going to lose my mind. And I kept thinking, why are you, I'm 17. I just lost my dad. Who was going to take care of me? I was kind of selfish, but I remember, I don't know, I just remember feeling a huge amount of responsibility at, the same time. And it was just, already having depression and anxiety. It didn't help anything. And, like I said, I ended up, let's go back to, my high school graduation, and, just feeling so, it was, and so I thought maybe, leaving home, I really did. I wanted to get out of there. I thought leaving home might change things. And so I actually went straight in. I didn't take the summer between college and high school and college. I just jumped right in. And, I did very well at first, but I also, was still trying to deal with just, there was so much, I'd never had counseling for that accident. I had a lot of PTSD, and just all of the other things that I experienced growing up. I mean, it all had this compound effect on me. So, leaving home, such a huge change too. And I developed an eating disorder, and I remember I was terrified of food. And I for many, many years, I dealt with that. It hasn't been till maybe the last decade that I've actually been completely recovered from anorexia. And I have to say, I don't know how I ended up having 2 healthy daughters, because I battled it through both my pregnancies even then. But I'm good that way now. I love food. But it was just I think another a symptom of me trying to, I didn't know what I needed, and I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know who to turn to. And it was just another way of trying to take some control, because up in here I just felt like everything was so out of control. And shortly after I started college, I ended up getting married the first time. And it was, he was a good guy. and we were together for 13 years, and we have 2 daughters together. But it wasn't what I had hoped for. It didn't fill the voids, and that's something I didn't know then. But really, to have a good relationship with somebody and to be able to reciprocate the love back and forth, that you have when you have a good bond with somebody. It was, I wasn't whole myself, and it just, it didn't give me the things that I needed. And um uh when I while I was still in college, well, going to university, um I can't remember what it was. Something happened, and I ended up with, I think it was a bottle of Valium, for, because it's not just for anxiety; it's also very good as a muscle relaxant. I must have pulled something. I don't even remember, but I remember that I took the whole bottle, and I took, multiple doses at one time, and that was really the beginning of my addiction. Well, not the beginning. I guess it's more of a continuation, but I did have a huge period where I was able to, stay away from it. But by, at that point in my life, I really needed help. And like I said, I didn't want to admit that I needed that help. And I didn't know where to go. I really didn't know what to do. So I numbed myself, any chance I got, after that, if I was at a family member's house and noticed they had a couple extra Lortabs sitting around, or some Tylenol threes or whatever, I helped myself. And, anytime I was injured, or I had, I've had a couple surgeries, different things, anytime I was given, pain pills, yeah, they didn't last very long. And that's how it started, was like that. Um, and it was just, any chance I could get, any opportunity that I came across, if I could get my hands on it, I'd take it. I didn't matter if you needed it. It didn't matter. It took off from there. It just got worse and worse. And, you know, at the same time, as it's progressing, I become a nurse, and I begin working, and I worked, at a nursing home, my very first job. Later on, well, I worked there for a while, and I was really good. You know, I had access to all kinds of things, of course, as a nurse, but I never, for a long time, never touched anything at work. Just, stayed away from that. And I ended up, after that job, working, at a child psychiatric unit, in Ogden, Utah. It was McCady Hospital. And, I think I worked there for about 6 months, and then I bounced over, started working in ICU. And then sometimes when they needed extra people at the adult psych unit, I'd go down there, and sometimes I would go down to the telemetry ward. It was just, as over. There were multiple places where I worked, and by this time, I was beginning to, I never took anything from a patient, if they needed it. Nobody ever suffered. But if somebody had something prescribed, and I was their nurse, and they didn't ask for it, I'd pocket it. And it just, I've done a lot of. I'm definitely not proud of the things I've done, but it got out of control. And uh by the time it got really bad, um I had 2 daughters by this point, and just my mental health just was so bad, and especially after having two children, my hormones just, they, people that have anxiety and depression, your hormones can really have a horrible effect and make it so much worse. And, I was experiencing a lot of that. I was, battling depression, and then it got really bad after both my daughters because of the postpartum. And, so I was taking, any opportunity that I could find, whether it was, from friends or family or from the hospital. If the opportunity was there, you know, I took what I wanted, and I ended up just, I don't remember how much, it was after my second daughter. I'd finally just felt like I was really going to lose my mind again, and I ended up quitting. I couldn't be a mom. I was working graveyards and then coming home and taking care of my two daughters. Um, this was the point where my first husband was gone most of the time because of work and school, and it was just, I just couldn't handle it anymore. And it was, yeah, I wasn't doing well. And I remember it was probably about 6 months after I quit working at the hospital, and I couldn't find, I hadn't been able to get my hands on anything in a while. And um, that was my preferred way to deal with all the pain I felt inside. And I got this harebrained idea. I put my scrubs on. I still had my identification, my um, I got all dressed up, and of course, I had worked on multiple floors, so I knew where the narcs were kept on, at each nurse's station. I knew how to get my hands on the keys. I knew what I was doing, and I just pretended that I came from another unit. And I don't even remember which unit I went to, but I just said, oh, so and so has the keys, and I need this for my patient. And they gave me the keys, and I helped myself to a bunch of stuff. And, like I said, it was a stupid idea, and I had not thought it through. And of course, they security escorted me out, and I was arrested. And, definitely not something I'm proud of. And after that, I voluntarily gave up my nursing license. And, because, they said, the nursing board came to me and said, you can, you'll have, if you want to keep your license, then you're going to have to, do this and this and this and this. And you'll have to, drive down to Salt Lake whenever they call you to take a random P test and all of that. And I thought about it long and hard, and I decided, number one, I wasn't ready to quit, so there's no way I would pass a test, and I wasn't ready yet either. It was a stupid decision, but I wasn't ready yet to deal with everything from my past. And the other thing is that I just thought, I can't, I just didn't want to work around that anymore, ever, and have that temptation again, and ever do that again. I have no memory. I know I was arrested and everything. I have no memory of it. But I can't believe that my first husband didn't kick me out at that point. I wasn't well, and we ended up, shortly after that, I finally started to see a psychiatrist. I found one that I really liked, and when I telling him everything that had gone on and everything that had happened, and I started working with a counselor, and it was a start, but I was a mess, and the depression had just gotten so out of control that I had a few suicide attempts. And so they decided to put me through ECT, which is shock therapy, electroconvulsive therapy. And so I had, I don't even know how many treatments. Like they would do courses where they, do a couple of months at a time, where you'd start out with like 4 times a week, and then 3 times a week for a few weeks, and then 2 times a week. They kind of just give you those treatments. And I went through a course of that. And I remember being in and out of the hospital, and, the psych hospital, a couple of times. But, I tried to just keep going. But, those sticky fingers of mine, that continued to be a problem, even when we moved from Ogden out to Tooele. And, but, I tried really hard, and, considering I was a good mom, and most of the time, when you're not high, which was a lot of the time, because it wasn't like I never went out and found somebody to buy it from illegally like that. It wasn't anything like that. It was, like I said, just any opportunity that I found, but it just continued, and I just continued to try to deal with my mental health. I just remember trying all kinds of different medications and continuing to work with counselors. And I don't know. I don't know. I just didn't seem to get anywhere at first. And I'm not sure why with all of that. I don't know. Maybe it was just that I was numbing myself, and not really feeling everything all the time. Who knows? I don't know. But it was just, life just continued like that for year after year. And there was, it had happened a few times where I'd scared some of my friends because I'd taken so much, things like that. And my first husband finally just did, things like that would happen over and over again. And he finally warned me, and he said, "It ever happens again, we're done." And I don't know if I just didn't believe him, or if I think it was just, I just wasn't willing to stop yet. But I ended up, when my girls were a little older, I started to try to do more of the things I was interested in. And so I joined a singing group, and we would sing Balkan music, and we would get on these incredible costumes, and we got to perform in these amazing places singing, Balkan folk music, lots of Croatian, Bulgarian, things like that. It was just a lot of fun, and we were paid performers. And I spent some very fun years, and got to travel back east every summer for training. And I do some things like that. And I ended up going back to school to get my degree in English. I was going to the University of Utah, because that was just something else that I really loved, was English literature and things like that. And, and I'd have these spurts where I'd stay away from drugs, and I'd do really well, but then I just would self-sabotage. And my first husband just couldn't take it anymore. And because of all of the shock therapy that I had, it's supposed to just affect your short-term memory, so that when you're going through it, you need to keep a notebook with you to write things down, because your short-term memory isn't supposed to be so good. But I never had an issue with that. But it has ruined a lot of memories. I have no access to them anymore. Like, there's big chunks of my daughter's lives and their births and things that just aren't there. And so, and part of that too is your memory. Your brain does not record memories when you're deeply depressed either. It doesn't. If it does, it doesn't do a good job. So between all of that, a lot of these periods of my life, the memories just aren't there anymore, and it's kind of frustrating. But I did have a nervous breakdown in, what was it, 2002, and I completely fell apart. And um, I remember being in, well, coming, I don't even know how to explain it. It was like I was in a fugue state, I guess. I didn't know where I was. I remember all of a sudden waking up one day, and I'm at this in this psych unit at LDS hospital. I had no memory of how I got there. I didn't know how long I'd been there. It was very odd. And I remember, it was one of my longer hospital stays, and I went through another course of ECT. And, and at this point, my first marriage was ended. And um, it, I, yeah, that took a long time to pick up the pieces from that mess, but when I was finally okay to be on my own again, I got my own place, and close to my daughters into their school. And my first husband and I just shared custody of them while we were going through the divorce. And anybody who's been through a divorce knows how horrible that is. Yeah, it wasn't fun. And so, like I said, anytime that I had an opportunity to get my hands on narcotics, I just continued the same behavior. And as a single mom, the wonderful thing is that I ended up meeting my husband now again, and I've actually known him since fourth grade. And we actually graduated the same class and everything. But his marriage had just fallen apart, as mine had, and we met. I had no idea that he was teaching school at the high school out there and coaching basketball. Um, and we ended up together. We ended up getting married, and I told him my history. I disclosed everything. But what I didn't tell him is that it was still a problem. But yeah, the rest, the next chunk of my life was spent again just in and out of hospitals. I even spent 6 months at the state hospital here in Utah. And that was really rough on our marriage, for a lot of reasons. It's really hard when you have to carry on when you're by yourself. At least I was in the hospital, had other people around me, but my husband was by himself for a long time. And I put him through so much, just stealing other people's narcotics and in and out of hospitals. I mean, it was just a wreck. It was just, my life was a train wreck. And I've had so many mental health issues. Not, by that point, my anxiety and depression, it wasn't just that. They actually gave me the diagnosis of schizophrenia at one point, and I was a mess, and I was on a buttload of psych meds. It was not a good time in my life. And I ended up just going into the hospital over and over again. And a lot of times what would precipitate that would be that I would take too much of something and overdose and end up in the hospital, and then they flip you over to psych again. It was just, I was just rotating through over and over again. And oh, my poor husband. But I finally, they said, you know what, if you don't get some help for your drug problem, this is just going to continue, or you're going to end up offing yourself. And they said, you're going to rehab, and they found me a place, and I didn't want to go. But I really didn't feel like, I knew I needed to. But I went. But the first probably month, I was just going through the motions, just so that I would be able to see my children again. And I ended up at rehab for 6 months, and I really needed it. And it took a long time to really begin to deal with all the issues that I needed to deal with. And that was, I'm really grateful for that time. It was a long time to be there. And again, it was another 6 months that my husband was by himself. And, but it was there that I decided. I mean, I really looked at myself and really started to look at all the things that I had done and all the mistakes I had made. And, it was, it wasn't an easy time, but like I said, I'm very grateful for it. But I was very shaky coming out of that, and I did relapse once. Um, but you know what? It's been 14 and a half years now. Um, it hasn't been easy, but one of the ways that I become not so, when like I said, I was really a shaky sober at first, and one of the things that really helped was I finally just thought, be responsible for your behavior for once in your life, and I really had to take a hard look at myself, and in doing things like this where you just come clean and you just spill your guts to people, you know, um, that's it's very difficult to do that, but that's what it takes. If you are in active addiction and you want this craziness to end, the only thing really is to be honest with yourself. you know I mean, start there. um, that's what it takes, or you're going to constantly be trying to put out all the little fires that burn inside of you when you're not honest with yourself, and you're still trying to cover things up from yourself, let alone other people. That's what it takes. You have to be responsible for yourself and for your behavior. I mean, everything that we do, whether it's good or bad, has a consequence, and you cannot escape that. And it hasn't been easy, but it can be done. It's very humbling. You have to. It makes you feel this tall, to admit the things that you did for your addiction, and to not have to go to everyone that you have hurt so deeply and try to make amends. I mean, how can I ever make amends to my daughters or to my both husbands, for what I put them through? The only thing that you can do is pick yourself up and try to become the best you that you can be. That's all you can do. And looking back at all of these things, it is very painful, but I don't want to forget. And I think one of those things, when you are a new when you're new in your recovery, those things are so painful that they seem overwhelming and that you don't want to deal with them. But there's no easy answer here. You've got to look at them, and you've got to feel those feelings, and just know that over time the pain lessens a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more until you can talk about it and be okay and not totally fall apart. But it can be done. But it's not easy, and I wish there was a hack. I wish there was an easy answer that I could give people. There's not, but it's possible. It's possible to heal from everything in your past. It's possible to give up that addiction. It's possible to deal with all the pain and the shame. It is possible. And I'll tell you what else, it is so worth it. It is so worth it. I went through this enormous change, and I'm not sure even what it was, but it happened in 2016. I went through this huge change, and I really came out of myself. I used to be very quiet and never talked, and very quiet and reserved and kept to myself. And I'm definitely not like that anymore. I mean, I still enjoy my time, and I really am. I'm like an extroverted introvert. Does that make sense? That's what I am like, and I still need my own time and my own. But when I'm around people, when I come home from work, I really need time just to myself, away from everybody and everything, just to let things in my brain settle down. But I'm honestly, I still deal with depression and anxiety. It runs in my family, and that injury that I received as a kid really messed things up. I think that's one of the reasons maybe why it was so hard and took so long for me to finally be stable. I don't know, but I'll tell you what, my life has not been easy at all. Part of it was my own fault, but I don't think that the lessons that I have learned could have been learned any other way. And so I truthfully tell you that I am grateful for all of the hard things that I have been through. I'm very hard-headed. Sometimes, to learn, I've got to learn things the hard way. But I'll tell you, it's so worth it. I mean, I've never been busier in my life. And my kids are gone now, but between work and now doing live streams and just all the things I do with church and my grandchildren and my children and Stephen's children and the races that we do, all the things that we do now. I've honestly never been busier, but I've never been happier. And I'll tell you, the struggle is worth it. I you can't expect every day to be sunshine and rainbows and roses, but and we need those difficult things in order to learn and to grow and to become who we are. And in the process of struggling, you become very sensitive to other people, and you can sense when people need your help. You can sense and you can understand, and you have empathy. And I mean, some of those things, some of those lessons aren't learned any other way. And so I'll just say one more time, it is worth it. The struggle's worth it. And working towards that sobriety and maintaining it is worth it. It's not easy, but dang it, it's good. But I let me look at the chat here and see if there are any questions. I haven't been paying attention, and I apologize. I should have been looking at the chat. We've got Miss V. Morris is here. There's Charlie again. Let's see. Cemetery 76. Nice. Let's see. See if I found any questions here. And I feel like I just babbled on. But I don't know. I felt like I need to spend more time digging into the rewiring things that I have found so I can share those. And I really don't like sharing until I really understand it much better. So that is coming. But I just felt like this is something I needed to do for me, and maybe someone else can benefit from it. Oh, Chuck, that's awesome. He was replying to Barella, and it said, it's been a rough day mentally. Thankfully, surprisingly, I have no urges to drink or use H. I'm just not my guess. Well, but you didn't use, so good job. Good job. It's not easy at first. It's not. Oops, I skipped over something that Leisure said. He said, you're You're overloaded, Heather. Your empathy overloads you too much. Yeah, it does. And I don't know how to block it out. I've been working on it for a couple of years now. I don't know how to deal with that very well. I just have to feel it. Let's see. Miss V had said, yeah, even if you're numb, check at least you're sober being so. Yeah, it's a start. It's a start. I went through years and years and years of really just being completely numb and not being able to feel anything. I know what that feels like. And I'm sorry, but hey, it's a start for you. And, look at that and realize the accomplishment that it is. Because that, addiction is so ingrained into your brain, doing it over and over and over again. It is one of the hardest things to break out of. So that's a huge accomplishment, Mr. Norris. Let's see. And Varela, he's had a bad day too. So it's been a bad day. I'm literally flipping my keys in my hand right now, getting ready to get in my pickup and hit the drive-through. That sounds kind of good if you get something good. Let's see. Leisure said, I want to go get high so bad right now. Between all my pain I'm in, I beg for something stronger today. Oh dear. The nurse put a call into the doctor and I'm waiting for an answer. Oh boy. Oh, I'm so sorry. Physical pain is no joke. I understand the urge. I deal with fibromyalgia, chronic pain every day, and it's no joke, and it takes a toll on you. So I really hope that you get something from the doctor that's going to help. Please don't go get high. You can manage it. Please. I know it's not easy. I know. And I'm going to be putting out some videos on how I deal with pain, chronic pain. And that's something else that I've been working on. I want to do a really good video and probably a series because there's a lot of different things actually that I do, but that is coming. And I hope that can help some of you because I know a lot of people suffer from chronic pain. And like I said, it's no joke. It wears on you. It's just attrition. Every day it rubs away a little bit more when it isn't controlled, and it takes a toll on your mental health. It's serious. Let's see. Miss V said, have you ever thought? I have tried hypnosis before, Miss V, and I don't know. I just can't. I don't know if I just can't relax enough. I don't know. I've never been able to be successfully hypnotized, so I don't know. I've had 2 different counselors, therapists try, no go. So I don't know. Let's see. That would be nice to get those memories back. Oh, Chuck Norris here knows how awful divorce is too. Yeah. I am really sorry about that. That's they treat the dads so terribly too. I mean, I saw what my husband now had to go through with his children. I mean, they're all adults now, but yeah, that was not an easy time at all. Very expensive. Let's see. Anyway, Leisure said, you have to feel the empathy. It's a curse, Heather. I can't turn it off either. Yep. I know. I don't know how to turn it off. And with some of the patients that I'm working with now, because I'm back to nursing, but I'm working privately so that I get to still use all the skills that I was a very good nurse, and when I wasn't high on anything, I was a very good nurse, and it was very rare that I was at work. If it was a slow night or something, it was, hey, I'm being truthful. But I work privately now, and my point is, yeah, boy, I go off on tangents. My point is that empathy really does help with my patients now. Um, it's an asset at times, even though it's not easy. But anyway, I have babbled on for an hour, and I wish someone would have called in. But there you have it. A little bit more about me. Like I said, it's not easy, but I want people to understand that it can be done, and you can find true happiness and be able to become the person you want to be. It is possible. It really is. And yeah. Anyway, I hope you guys have a good night. I hope that this was of help or is of help to anybody that might happen to listen to it. And thank you everybody for tuning in and being here with me. I am touched that you stuck with me through it, and thank you. You guys are awesome. I hope you have a great night, and I will see you guys all tomorrow at the lifeboat. So have a good night.